pipes. Guys, why didn't we think about pipes? Oh my God, thank goodness above that Everytown for Gun Safety is here to pressure District Attorney Alvin Bragg to go after 3D printed companies to deploy technology to prevent your ability to actually make 3D printed guns, because after all, guys, pipes are available at hardware stores. Who could have thought that criminals would circumvent everyday items for criminal misuse? It's weird. We should probably just take all of our rights away. Well, we're going to explore that right now. Everything will be linked in the description box below. I always bring the receipts, and of course, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on. Guys, we are about to dive into something, so make sure you follow me at Braden LOA on X, because it turns out that all of this little hubbub that popped up over the weekend around banning of printing your own blowers and parts and receivers through technology from the actual database providers of 3D parts is completely inspired by Everytown for Gun Safety. I know what you're thinking. There's no way they would do it. They're so honorable in their actions. Yeah, they're not. I'm going to walk you through the entire thing, but first I've got to show you something from our sponsor. It is Aura. I'll see you on the flip. Today I want to talk to you through our sponsor, Aura. Now, this is an identity theft solution, and I want to tell you an example that happened to me personally and my wife. Now, she bought gas like every one of us does on a daily basis and used her credit card. That number was skimmed and stolen, and we would not have known that some criminal shyster on the internet was using our individual number and money to buy incremental purchases at random places across the United States very subtly and sneakily. And that's where Aura comes in. There's a link in the description box below to get your free 2-week trial, but let me show you some of the benefits they're offering. They offer data broker opt-out. It will help remove your personal information from data brokers, and Aura will make sure that they cannot sell your information to identity thieves. It's got identity theft protection and monitors your credit file and your social security number. There's financial fraud protection. You can get alerted in minutes when your credit file has been compromised. I'm not leaving my family and those that I love vulnerable to these types of thieves, so neither do you. Go to aura.com/Langley. There's a link in the description box below, and start your free 2-week trial to get in front of these shysters, and that's enough time to figure out if there's something going on with your profile. Link right in the description. All right, we are about to dive into this, people. My sarcasm was fully loaded, and along with the investigative journalism skills that only a Pro 2A channel can get, because I'll be honest with you, Everytown for Gun Safety is nefarious upon nefarious. All right, here's what we're going to talk about. The digital design firm agrees to block 3D guns following the letter from Manhattan DA. Yeah, it's Alvin Bragg, by the way. We'll get into that in a second. But do you remember who Alvin Bragg is? Yeah, he's that guy that kind of led that whole conviction felonious attempt with Donald Trump. You know, that guy. Well, he's also done this against Polymer 80. He's done this with other gun manufacturers or gun part manufacturers, because it's just, at this point, I'm going to say it, a freaking jihad against anybody who believes in their Second Amendment rights. But here's the example of what I'm talking about in the intro. Pipes. I'm just going to give you a little taste here, and then we're going to walk through this entire thing. Hybrid 3D printed firearms are those with most parts of the gun 3D printed. The firearm is completed with parts not specifically designed for firearms, such as metal tubes readily available at hardware stores and therefore not regulated in any jurisdiction. That sounds almost like pipe bombs. It's almost like you could have a criminal who subverts something that has no intention at all into a negative purpose. Like, I don't know, like cars that are used in crimes, guns that are used in crimes, knives that are used in crimes, cell phones that are used in crimes. You see, the common theme here is it's not the individual item the criminal uses, it's the criminal using the item. But don't worry, Everytown for Gun Safety is here to tell you how you can't do anything because of criminals. All right, let's get into this. Let me show you these points. And the fingerprints, I'm going to show you. Oh, it's so frustrating, these people. All right. Printing violence. Printing violence. Urgent policy actions are needed to combat 3D printed guns. Now, you see the date right here? 7/17. Yeah, just bear with me. I'm going to show you some other dates here that are going to coalesce rather nicely. Watch this. The shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson using a homemade firearm with a 3D printed frame and silencer marked the first time many in the general public heard about 3D printed guns. Hey, you know what they didn't tell you there? Yeah, they didn't tell you that was in New York, where you can't have a gun unless you do all the little gun control steps, and you can't really have suppressors, and they didn't mention that. Isn't that weird? One of the leading states with gun control didn't stop this, but they still utilize it to push for gun control. Is it odd to anybody? It shouldn't be. These people are a joke of all people. Anyway, let's keep on going. The proliferation, there's that language again, of 3D printed firearms, 3DPFs, you're going to hear that a lot, has emerged as a serious and accelerating public safety challenge. The current state of 3D printing technology allows an individual to print all or key parts of a firearm at home, like other kinds of ghost guns. Now, here's an important piece. Again, if you're deep in this, you recognize that. If you're not, here you go. They went after ghost guns, and the proliferation of ghost guns was their main language talking point on ghost guns. Now it's proliferation of 3D printed guns. See how they do this? They just basically piecemeal everything. Let's keep going though. 3DPFs lack serial numbers, so law enforcement is unable to trace them back to their owner when they are recovered in a crime. Because 3DPFs are untraceable and require no background check, they are particularly attractive to gun traffickers who can print dozens of firearms and avoid raising alarms. Again, here's the thing. You are perfectly allowed, and it is perfectly legal, and it is perfectly in our history, text, and tradition, see what I did there, of our nation, to make your own firearms. By the way, it's also perfectly legal to make your own alcohol. You just can't sell it without paying the tax. That's the whole point. You see how that word tax keeps coming up? Because that's how they justify the ability to infringe upon any activity that you do. If they put a tax on it, oh my God, wait a minute. Tax, stamp tax, tea tax, ink tax. Anything reminding anybody of our history here? It's almost like the use of financial means to curtail a population's freedom is done through taxes, like a king and now like a legislature. Do you, like, guys, literally the connections are undeniable. But let's continue. And the online community that produces and beta tests these designs, including alarmist extremist elements, with many designers viewing 3D printing as a means to bypass or dismantle gun laws altogether. 3D printing your own firearm is just like if you were to melt or smelt or build your own gun. It does not make a difference. The point is you have the right to make anything of your own. That's the point. The problem becomes when you actually want to sell it. And that's based on existing law, not on principle, on existing law. These people are fully pushing this across the board, and now look where it shows up. 1 second, I'm going to connect all these dots. Meanwhile, in Europe, let's inject some fear, because this would not be a good article if it didn't have fear. In Europe, new 3D PF designs allowing people to print functioning firearms threaten to undermine the gun safety laws that have long protected the continent from the degree of gun violence in the US. Now, here's the thing. Understand what they just introduced. They introduced Europe, continent, global. This is the point. You're going to see this again in a second. Bear with me. Europe, continent, global. All right? Section 1 of the white paper below, which I'm going to quote a few things for you, of this white paper outlines the technical and cultural landscape of 3D printed weapons, including the subcultures and platforms that support their development. Oh, let's get into this a little bit. Here's the 3 different types. Again, I'm doing all of this for a very specific reason. I'm going to get you here in a second. Since 2013, the sophistication of 3D printed firearms has advanced considerably in a relatively short time frame, and weapons enthusiasts as well as extremist actors continue to innovate this technology. In the past decade, 3 generational categories of 3D PFs have emerged. Are you ready for them? Here's where it gets real stupid. Part kits completions, or PKCs, are firearms whose frame or receiver is 3D printed, while the rest of the completion is basically by buying them, right? Like slides. All the different pieces, frame, like everything except the serialized frame, okay? But this next one, hybrid 3D printed firearms, are those with most parts of the gun 3D printed. The firearm is completed with parts not specifically designed for firearms, such as metal tubes, readily available at hardware stores and therefore not regulated in any jurisdiction. Do you see how it undermines the gun control promise, but then they also ask for more gun control? So the whole point here is this is a big evil thing that uses a pipe that circumvents all gun control because people are using pipes to make things that they don't like. So therefore you need more gun control even though it circumvents gun control, and all the while the whole basis of the argument was based in New York where all of this is already illegal. Just waiting for the point where it magically works. Maybe we should pass 10 more laws. Fully 3D printed firearms. This is everything with except the firing pin. Now, this part, I'm going to show you a few things. This is all about fear-mongering, to be quite candid. 3D printing is also being used to produce deadly accessories for firearms. Most notably, designers have been releasing the blueprints for a machine gun conversion devices, or MCDs, that convert semi-automatic firearms, including Glock-style pistols and AR and AK-style rifles, into fully automatic machine guns that will continue firing as long as the shooter depresses the trigger and the gun has ammunition. Again, that's already against existing law in the NFA federally and in multiple state jurisdictions and localities. But yet still, it's 3D printers that are to blame. The gun control is not to blame. It's the 3D printers that are to blame. Do you see this? It's not the gun control that's to blame. It's the pipe manufacturers that are to blame. You keep on going down this road, and eventually you get to the point where you just ban everything under the sun because criminals are going to criminal. This right here. It's the last piece of Everytown, and then I'm going to jump over to the next piece. The Second Amendment is for shooting cops. The 3DPF online community is suffused with extremist sentiment. Now we're just going to slander and fear, huh? Okay. Now let's tie it all together. You see this date right here? July 19th. Remember how on this one I had the date of July 17th? Look at this. Right there. Yeah. Isn't it amazing 2 days later? One of the world's largest digital design platforms, Thingiverse, is taking new steps to block 3D printed guns and gun parts after investigators in New York discovered an alarming number of design files for 3D printed weapons available for download. Thingiverse began deploying automated technology to rapidly detect and remove digital files for 3D firearms. Thingiverse is committed to fostering a safe, welcoming, and collaborative environment for its global community. See how that just popped up? As part of this commitment, we regularly review and update our policies and procedures to help prevent the sharing of unlawful and harmful content, such as weapon and illegal materials, as outlined in our acceptable use policy, the company said in a statement. Isn't it interesting how Everytown for Gun Safety on the 17th puts out that white paper? They get in touch with Alvin Bragg in New York. Alvin Bragg, who does their bidding, sends a letter to Thingiverse, just like he sent to Polymer 80, and now all of a sudden Thingiverse says, yeah, we're going to use technologies to get rid of that. They do the same tricks every single time. See, look. Following discussions with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office about concerns about untraceable firearms, we are taking additional steps to improve our content moderation efforts, they added. Guys, this is the way this works. You have Everytown for Gun Safety who gets a hard-on for some topic that they think they can win on. 7/17 is the time when they released this white paper. In the time of 7/17 to 7/19, they sent a letter to Alvin Bragg. They got on the phone. They got on the horn. They said, hey, Alvin, let's do this. I got a good campaign donation coming your way. If you can just send a letter to Thingiverse and make them basically curtail your will, and now all of a sudden we can't have any 3D printed firearm CAD files because Everytown for Gun Safety got in touch with a corrupt DA, which also was involved with Trump's federal charges, and now Thingiverse says, nah, we're not going to charge anything. Isn't that interesting how that works? I thought it was interesting. The wonders never cease. But, I hope you guys enjoyed this content. I've got a lot more coming for you. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm Braden. See you later.